Doctoral Researcher from University of East London, expert on Middle East and studying on the geopolitics of Northern Eastern Syria, Hamit Ekinci. Thanks for joining us today.
Hi, thank you very much.
Thank you, Hamid. As you follow the developments very closely on what's really happening on the Middle East, I would really want to understand the clashes between the SDF and HTS. How did it cause? What did it cause? And then how basically did it end up? Or did it really end up? There is ceasefire, and we know that still the Kobane is under siege, and there is some agreements as well. I know it's a very general, a big frame question, but we really want to understand from the perspective of the UK, of course, according to UK politics, how should we read what's really happening in Middle East right now?
In 2014, the ISIS intensified its attacks on the Syrian Kurds. And after that, the Syrian Kurdish resistance triggered some Western intervention, coupled with the Western interest of on the Syria. They intervened in Syria as an anti-ISIS coalition. But when the Kurdish lands liberated from ISIS, they faced a dilemma. That dilemma was pushing more towards Arabic populated areas in Syria or not. So that the United States, together with the Syrian Kurds, decided to establish a Arab Kurdish Assyrian coalition to fight against ISIS, which is Syrian Democratic Forces. And Syrian Democratic Forces was able to uh, liberate a big land from ISIS and establish some local councils in the areas they liberated from ISIS. Although till this part, the military part, worked very well with limited boots of the Western powers on the ground, uh, and Irish support for the local militia, the political part wasn't that easy and smooth because the rejection and objections of Turkey and also the American unwillingness to recognize political any political entity in northern eastern Syria resulted in a de facto autonomy, but not recognized by anyone. So after the HTS takeover of the Damascus, uh, northern eastern Syria was in a stronger position because it was controlling almost all economic assets of the Syria, but excluded from the talks. After they excluded from post-conflict settlement, we were expecting a military escalation between the parties, but wasn't that quick. Uh, During the last month, the HTS started to attack Syrian Kurds, first in Aleppo. Aleppo was a place that Kurdish fighters evacuated after an agreement mediated by the United States, and simply the militia there was lightly armed civilians responsible for the local policing, but HTS committed a war crime there. And after that, we were expecting intervention from the Western powers, but they rather pushed SDF more to give up its territory without any political gains. And the main problem is that.
Thank you, Hamid. Also, as I also really wanted to understand the British policies in the Middle East as well, because Britain is one of the signatories from the latest agreements has done between the Britain, US, Germany, and France as well, which has been published from the Britain's Foreign Affairs Office. How does the British politics approaching to the Kurds? Is the Kurds really ally with the Britain in fight against ISIS, or the Kurds has been left alone? Just to clear up the audience mind, how does the Britain approaching to the Middle East, especially on the Kurds?
Britain was one of the rulers of the world before the Pax Americana. So, of course, the current political posture, current political architecture, including the military architecture, the economic architecture, is leftover of Britain. So that they are effective to craft American policy in the Middle East. How we can say that? They prepared Jolani to be al-Shara together with Americans. They had a common agenda in Syria, and it was based on excluding the Kurds. They like Kurds when they want to fight against terrorism, because Kurds have to fight against terrorism because they were subjected to attacks by jihadi terrorists in their own lands. But when it comes to political alliances, they rather prefer collaborate with the big capital groups, especially from the Gulf countries. That's the point of British politics. And not surprisingly, for example, Tony Blair took a part in the council which willing to govern the Gaza accordingly with American interest. So same with Syria. In Syria, American and British policy is overlapping. That overlapping policy is opening Syria to the big investment and the Gulf capital. They want to put minimal effort and get maximum profit. From their point of view, that's very logical. For that, we need to understand deeper. We need to understand Jonathan Powell and his approach to terrorist organizations. In his view, in his point of view, the terrorists are workable actors. They are all rational actors at the end of the day. So if you find a middle ground, you can work with them. What does that mean for the average people in Middle East is living with the terrorists or seeing them as leaders of the country?
Hamid, thank you. Also, another issue is about Jolani, which has been named as Al Shara. So basically, there is a rumor goes on that this guy has been like supported by Turkey, which has been mentioned by John Bolton as well. And there is lots of videos and many other conspiracy theories that he is being supported by UK as well. So very shortly, very briefly, just like in to the point answer with a to the point answer. How do you see that? Do you think the Jolani is a project in the Middle East?
The British policy is more like a status quo protective approach because they founded current system in the Middle East. So they want to pressure it for their own benefits. They are able to extend it to a level, but they are not a fan of dismantling it. With the Jolani, they were able to control Syria with a very limited effort and get maximum profit. Jolani is a listed terrorist. He is responsible for many attacks in Iraq, and even UK and USA was subject to terrorist attacks by the Al Qaeda affiliated groups, Al Qaeda or its affiliated groups. And now this policy gives them a free room, a power vacuum they can exploit. So I don't think it's rational, but in Western logic, Middle East is somewhere very far away from the West. So they don't care what's happening there. Real problem is that. Also, to turn back to Jonathan Powell, he was visiting an university, and the students asked him, which historical character would you like to meet? And he was like, I wanted to meet with Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, because he's very smart guy. I know that's not logical. He's declaring an Islamic State in Mosul, which is very important for the international political economy. I know that's not his real goal, but what's his real goal? I want to discuss with him, and I want to find a logical point. I want to see his logic. What's his point? I want to discuss with him and find a middle ground with him. Now, the Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi eliminated by the Kurdish forces and American partners. But now Joran is another Baghdadi, ready to serve Western interests, and no one cares what he's going to do within the Syria. Also, he is a dirty guy, a designated terrorist, so that it will be super easy to utilize him as a tool against Iran. Yeah, that's the point. Also, I believe he's not a real threat against Israel anymore. Although Israeli foreign policy is not happy about him, he's not a real threat. So somehow Israel is satisfied with the result.
Yes, definitely. I do agree with that as well. That Israel is not disturbed anymore from the Jolani's and his system as well. So, lastly, very shortly, very briefly, we need to talk about what is the next will be in the region. So, what kind of design will be given to the Middle East and Syria by international powers such as Britain, US, France, and Germany as well. So do you think the next war will be in Iraq or Iran? And is there will be any Kurdish or Arab conflict? So what is the next for the Middle Eastern people?
I believe Kurdish-Arab conflict avoided by the Kurdish policymakers, because if they have decided to protect, I mean, racist in Raqqa, Deir ez-Zor, Arab majority towns of Syria liberated by Syrian Democratic Forces, it would fool Arab-Kurdish conflict. But now they decided to withdraw their historical Kurdish lands, and they are protecting Kurdish lands, and they are insisting their rights to be recognized there. For the rest of Syria, no one can know, because probably there is no clear American policy on Syria. I have heard some Americans are objecting what's happening in Syria, and they are very tense about the situation. They are very concerned about the situation because the free ISIS cells, especially in Deir ez-Zor, which is neighboring Iraq, will of course cause some cross-border conflict with Iranian forces operating in Iraq, Iranian affiliated forces operating in Iraq. I am not sure if the expectation is that they want to put a limit in Iranian influence by growing up supporting the Sunni Islam. I'm not sure, but I don't expect they will receive all of their goals. They will succeed all of their goals due to the field is something different. There are some tribal dynamics. There are some national dynamics. Many dynamics are involving. So I don't think the plan is clear, and I believe we will see more chaos.
Thank you, Hamid. Hamid Ekinci, expert on Middle East from London. Thanks for joining us and thank you for your valuable comments.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.